We, as Metroid fans, have been absolutely put through the ringer. This is a series that could have been, at multiple different points, as big as Mario or Zelda if Nintendo ever gave a crap and actually bothered to invest in it. It takes quite some moxie to have the original heroine of video gaming as a whole, Samus Aran, in your roster and waste her like this. And if you're unwilling or unable to understand why that stupid fucking bike in the Metroid Prime 4 part of the Direct has people upset, then there's no room for you here. Your lack of suspicion at this point is a problem, and I don't care how long you claim to have loved the series for. Giving Nintendo grace at this point is a red flag to me. If, for some reason, you're not a Metroid fan and have no idea how this relatively simple 40-second footage could cause such outrage, then let me hold your hand for a bit. Metroid is the pioneer of its genre, and its central tenet of exploration and isolation is key to its success. Speedrunning to the side, a Metroid game works best when it's slow-paced and claustrophobic. You are not supposed to know what's around the corner or past that next door, and travel between areas is done slowly, on foot. The most well-regarded entries in the series, Super Metroid and Metroid Prime, both operate on this design logic. It is 2025 and showing us a Metroid game of all things with Samus on a goddamn Master Cycle Zero in a huge open desert where you can see everything for miles is basically a slap in the face. Oh, you say, the most aggravating kind of engagement in the world? Relax! Metroid did this in 2001. Everybody saw Metroid Prime's teasers for the first time and they were so pissed that it was a first-person shooter. They were so skeptical and it turned out to be great. You're just hating blindly like those fans did back then. If you seriously cannot see major contextual differences between what was happening with Nintendo in 2001 and what's happening now, then you're either ignorant to the point of malice or just playing defense for Nintendo. Let's examine that comparison, okay? Because first and foremost, what I hope is an obvious concept to grasp, just because it worked before, it doesn't mean it'll work a second time. No one is going to feel like waiting it out to see if doing the exact opposite of Metroid gameplay is going to vastly revolutionize Metroid, which is what it would have to do at this point. Second, and I need you to listen to me on this one, you should not want this to be a repeat of Metroid Prime development. For one, there's a very crucial detail being overlooked here. Retro Studios' own staff at the time considered Shigeru Miyamoto, responsible for many of the sweeping changes there, to be someone who didn't care if they ended up making a bad game, and in fact didn't care if it crashed and burned. And that's the guy who headlined Tears of the Kingdom, which tracks because the game fucking sucked. Furthermore, Metroid Prime's development did stop and restart multiple times and shuffle studios and designers out, and it ended up way different than what fans expected, that's true. But also, it was fucking traumatizing for Retro Studios. A lot of the development teams from that era do not want to remember the absolutely brutal working conditions they were going through, and a lot of them left the company after the game hit, which is why handing Metroid Prime 4 to the modern-day Retro Studios, while seemingly a wise move, doesn't necessarily mean it'll be good. If the development of Metroid Prime 4 in any way resembles that of Prime 1, it needs to be thrown back in Nintendo's face. Third, the reason Metroid Prime worked at all was because despite looking like first-person shooter slop, and rightfully earning some skepticism for it, it actually wasn't. The game held true to traditional Metroid just from a first-person point of view, which is why Nintendo coined first-person adventure for this subseries. No one looking at this Direct is going to believe for half a second that Nintendo are doing this because they want Metroid to be good. They're doing this because Nintendo wants to factory churn out open-world Breath of the Wild clones to make hundreds of millions of dollars quickly. But why can't Metroid fans just wait, you cry? Wait and see! We've been waiting for 8 motherfucking years, and we waited that long specifically because we needed a game that felt like Nintendo respected us. Things in 2017 were much, much different than they are now. Metroid fans were rightfully at an all-time low when it came to morale and respect for Nintendo, and it was entirely Nintendo's fault. Hence the announcements of Samus Returns for the 3DS, and that fuck-ass logo they showed us. Nintendo has spent a lot of time, and I do mean a lot of time, either mistreating Metroid fans or trying to make up for grievously shitting on them time after time. The era of Metroid Prime was the highest point these fans ever saw, a modicum of success and respect, to the point that you could find fans butting heads with those who played Halo in the streets, and arguing over who was better, Samus or Master Chief. All of that went down in flames with the historically bad and viciously unpopular Metroid Other M. I don't want to talk about it for too long because if I do, I will vomit. In short, it was character assassination, tearing down this iconically independent heroine who's usually no talk, all action. It was a Sonic 06 level failure, and in my opinion was the worst game. It was widely agreed to be both a bad game in general, with awkward design flaws, and a really bad Metroid game, since it was this railroaded, shooty action romp. The characters were bad or bland, and sometimes outright abusive, and it minimized and feminized Samus Aran, making her out to be weak and timid. Hearing someone defend or enjoy this game gets received as an immediate red flag, because of the sheer levels of misogyny oozing out of the game. This put Metroid on ice for a while, and when it came back, it was with Metroid Prime Federation Force. Federation Force was headlined by Kensuke Tanabe, a Nintendo higher-up that had worked not only on the Prime series, but a lot of good Nintendo material, such as Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, and he had wanted to make something like this for a while. But while I like him, I'm not going to cut him any slack for this. Federation Force was a disaster. It was a cartoony co-op game that focused not on Samus Aran, but on the soldiers of the Galactic Federation, aka those guys that hang around and die to regular space pirates and typically rank very low on the tier list. Look, I don't even think the idea by itself is bad. Even though Samus is my hero, I don't think the Federation troopers themselves are impossible as protagonists, but not in this format. Some who are more level-headed might have asked, why not? I mean, it worked with Wind Waker, right? That game had everybody beating their chest because of the cartoon art style, but it went on to become one of the most beloved Zelda games ever, right? But there's reasons why you can take this approach with Zelda and not with Metroid. Zelda is a fantasy series, and a whimsical charm is healthy for it. You can play a small character and still feel big in a fantasy series. By contrast, Metroid is a sci-fi adventure series that verges on horror half the time, and it's typically considered to be more mature in concept than Nintendo's big frontrunner series. You're supposed to be big and feel small, not the other way around. Even in the best case scenario, this game wouldn't have been well received, and Nintendo knew that, which is why they slapped the Prime label on there, despite this trashy-ass game having nothing to do with that series, as if hoping to hoodwink their fans into buying it. So that's 2 strikes against the fanbase. What's strike number 3? Well, strike number 3 was a game called AM2R. You see, after the original Metroid was remade as Metroid Zero Mission, fans of the series took to doing their own fan remakes of the second game, Metroid 2: Samus Returns. The only one of these to survive to completion and be fully playable would be called another Metroid 2 remake. If you've seen the reviews of this fan game, you'll know that it was an absolute gem, and blew other fan games out of the water. It was faithful to the series while still being inventive, a real love letter to Metroid at a time when Metroid fans really couldn't take any further disappointments, and really needed something good. Spearheaded by Dr. M64, it was made largely by himself for over 10 years of unpaid work, 10 years of free labor just to give Metroid some love. It had a complete soundtrack, had a New Game Plus. It was fantastic. It would come out in August 2016 and be given a DMC takedown notice basically immediately, shelving the game forever. A lot of people grasp onto the coming release of Metroid 2's official remake, Return of Samus, as some kind of shield against scrutiny for this, but that only works if you're a brain-rotted idiot that thinks everything Nintendo ever does is correct. Let me make this clear. This decision was evil. Not only was there no reason the two games couldn't have coexisted, but AM2R wasn't a threat to Return of Samus at all. In fact, taking it down likely harmed Return of Samus' incoming sales, since it pissed off Metroid fans to the point of many discussing boycotts. They used a copyright strike, as they usually do, not a trademark violation procedure, which means they did it because they want to, not because they have to. The correct thing to do would have been to buy AM2R from Dr. M64, aka Milton Guasti, and hire him on as an official developer, given that his portfolio was obviously crazy. But instead, they waited until the game released and went, actually, that's illegal, die! And as if that weren't bad enough, just to make it clear they're demons, AM2R was removed from the Best Fan Games of 2016 category because Nintendo wouldn't legally clear them to be there, which helped literally nothing. This was the final straw for a lot of people. I don't think there is a more contemptuous way to behave towards your fans. I have never seen an expression of disrespect like this from any game company, especially because it wasn't financially motivated. They just did it to be assholes. Buying the property and selling it as an official Nintendo game could have made them millions, but no. Milton Guasti went on to work for the Ori series, which was probably better than working for Nintendo at this point anyway. 2017 would bring Samus Returns, which was an okay kind of game, usually not hyped nearly as much as Nintendo hoped. 2021's Metroid Dread would be the game that actually broke new ground, forging a new path forward for Metroid and selling great numbers, but the suspicion and mistrust on the part of the fanbase remains. But all this history just explains why Metroid fans don't like Nintendo. It doesn't explain why 40 seconds of motorcycle footage in the desert is being hailed as the destruction of the series. Well, as Lord Frogmire observed in his video, Nintendo has made it abundantly clear they would set people on fire just to sell the ashes at a markup. But even if you disregard that and consider only released games exclusively, this still bodes very badly. Regardless of how well they actually sold numbers-wise, Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Kart World, two big-budget games from Nintendo's biggest franchises, suffered immensely because all they really cared about was shoving a Breath of the Wild mold onto their biggest new releases and refusing to think any further on them. Their reputations as games are now in the toilet, and it is very popular to dunk on them because they were disappointing games flat out. Even Pokemon hasn't been safe from this. Basically, every big budget game they've been releasing has bore signs of very little thought from the higher-ups besides make a huge open world game because that sells. And predictably, this has left a lot of fans pissed off. And considering that Metroid Prime 4 was scrapped and completely restarted in 2019, just after Nintendo had made disgusting amounts of money for 2 straight years with Breath of the Wild, it is looking incredibly likely that Metroid Prime 4 was scrapped and restarted specifically to include this kind of nonsense. And with no Satoru Iwata around to stop them, I'm fearing the worst. Now, you want us to just accept the very strong likelihood that this is exactly what they did to Metroid Prime 4, when an open-world Breath of the Wild style is the literal antithesis of Metroid gameplay, or why people like the series at all. Virtually no thought seems to have gone into this. Like, I actually cannot fathom showing off some hunky-dory, expensive-looking motorcycle, and showing Samus riding around a desert, and then thinking fans are going to be impressed by that. That's some shit Microsoft would have been doing in 2013.
Perfect coat of paint. Air you can taste.
You can give Link a high-tech futuristic motorcycle in Breath of the Wild all you want. As a bonus mechanic, it kind of slaps. But Samus isn't Link. Let me make something very clear. Samus Aran would never get on a motorcycle for any reason, ever, for the simple fact that she can run on foot faster than any motorbike could ever propel her. It's called the speed booster, bitch. Oh, but maybe it's a little faster than she runs, or she needs to get someplace she can't use the speed booster. It's called the fucking screw attack, bitch. The Prime games have that too. Samus can literally fly. There is absolutely zero logical reason Samus would ever have need of a motor vehicle for terrestrial exploration, and anything beyond that is what she has a fucking gunship for. The audacity to show this garbage nonsense and expect people to be impressed by that, rather than seriously worried about the implications. The same reason I don't want Samus on a motorcycle is the same reason I don't want her swinging around a sword. Never in her life would she need to, and she has cooler things to do anyway. Whining about people doom posting and hating won't change the fact that what you're really demanding from them is to be nice to Nintendo, and that alone should get you laughed out of the room. No one has time for this anymore. No one has the funds for this anymore. Metroid Prime 4 back in 2017 was a promise to try and do better, and the look of it now is a promise to do worse. This is supposed to be a game that's going to finally save this franchise, but I'm anticipating another Federation Force at best. I wanted to be excited for Metroid Prime 4, but what are the odds of Nintendo actually delivering anything good or remotely worth it at this point? About the same odds, if you ask me, of a camel fitting through the eye of a needle. So yes, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to continue hating on that stupid fucking bike.